So, first of all, apologies for the delay. A warm welcome to everyone here in the room and to those of you joining us online. My name is Miro Notev. I'm the head of the media and events team at the EU Agency for Fundamental Rights, which is organizing this 4th edition of the Fundamental Rights Forum. And it is my pleasure to welcome you today, to welcome those of you again following online, and to be the person that's introducing our wonderful speakers today. Before I do that, I just want to say that the Masterclass sessions are our effort to bring a slightly more tangible experience to the participants in the forum. Definitely a learning experience, and I have no doubt that from each of the 6 Masterclasses you will get inspiration to take further action in your respective areas of work. I also want to say that I already mentioned that the masterclasses are live streamed. They will also be recorded, so they will be available after the forum if you would like to watch them again. And there is, as you can see, also sign language interpretation live and live transcription for each of those sessions. That's enough about the logistics. I'm really happy to introduce our speakers. Of course, we will hear from the Anne Frank House in their masterclass, Tackling Antisemitism and Racism in Football Through Education on and Off the Pitch. Of course, we know the significance of Anne Frank herself, of the Anne Frank House and the wonderful museum in Amsterdam. But the Anne Frank House also has a long-standing tradition of tackling antisemitism and racism through education. This is what we'll hear about today. And of course, they used that experience and that tradition and applied it to the world of football. And before I spoil too much, it is my pleasure to introduce Norbert Hinterleitner, who is the head of education at Anne Frank House, and Joram Verhoeven, who is a project manager at the Anne Frank House. Thank you.
Thank you very much for attending our masterclass. Very welcome, also people online at home or in their offices. I'm Norbert Hinterleitner. I'm head of the education department in the Anne Frank House, and my colleague Joram Verhoeven, who does all the work in football. So we try to take you today on a journey, on a trip, where we show you and would like to invite you to follow us on that trip through a couple of questions. How to tackle anti-Semitism and racism in football, in the stadiums, but also in amateur football clubs. We would like to take you on this trip to see some successes, to see our approach, to hear about our overall educational approach, our decisions why to work in football, our challenges, things that went good, things that were really difficult. And the idea of all this is, as we just heard, to inspire you. And during the questions and answer sessions, which will start approximately in 40-45 minutes, we would also like to invite you to have a bit of a conversation with us. The motto of this masterclass is, do try this at home. The idea is to inspire you to copy, but not to paste, but to adapt to your own local challenges and your own local situations. When we look at these two pictures, I think it's pretty obvious what you see here, Anne Frank and a football supporter who shows a Hitler greeting. What do these two have? What's the relation between those? I think it's pretty obvious, and you don't need a lot of words to explain and to see what the influence of the ideology that is expressed on the right-hand side, what influence this ideology had on the life of Anne Frank. But our question is the reverse question. How much influence does the life story of Anne Frank have on the thoughts and the behavior of that particular individual supporter? And this is what we want to discuss today with you. But we start with Anne Frank's father. When we talk about inspiration, Well, he's the one who inspired us in the Anne Frank House. It's not only that he set up the organization Anne Frank House, it's also that he gave us a task. It's one of my favorite quotes from Otto Frank, where he said, "We can no longer change what happened. The only thing we can do is to learn from the past." And there's many more things that he said, and that led us to the mission of the Anne Frank House, the mission statement. And I would like to show it to you to understand a bit the background and the decisions why we started to work in the domain of football. There are two tasks. If you read the first sentence of our mission statement, it's about the preservation of the place where Anne Frank was in hiding and where she wrote her famous diary. So that's the maintenance and the preservation. That's not what we are here for today. We are here for the second sentence of our mission statement, and this is based on the task, the ideas of Otto Frank, the only survivor of the 8 hiders in the secret annex, her father. It says that we bring the life story and the work of Anne Frank to the attention of as many people as possible, worldwide. So that means definitely outside of our museum, our educational outreach. But we do that with an aim. We do that with the aim of raising awareness of the dangers of anti-Semitism, racism and discrimination, and the importance of freedom, equal rights and democracy. That's a pretty broad mission statement, so we needed to focus. We needed to decide, well, which target groups do we want to work and on which topics do we want to concentrate. We work with this slogan, remember, reflect, respond. It's more than a slogan, it's 3 steps in our educational approach. Remembrance, pretty obvious. You need to know what has happened in the past. Let's think about the quote of Otto Frank. We can't change the past, but we can learn from it. Reflect, that's exactly this. Let's learn from it. Let's know what happened, and let's reflect on it. Let's think about it, and let's each, in our individual way, in our local contexts, stand still at what does it mean to us and why should we remember, and which lesson does it tell us. And that all with the idea to go into action, to respond. That can be verbally, that can be in writing, that can be by starting an activity. We decided to focus on mainly young people, to help them to make these 3 steps, from remembrance to reflecting to responding. We want especially young people to understand. We don't teach them, we let them discover that they have influence themselves on their own surrounding. Young people often have the idea of having no influence, or very little influence. You can't vote as a young person, but also we as adults. How often do we feel like nobody listens to me? I don't have any influence in the world. Decisions are taken elsewhere. We know this attitudes from, it's very actual in newspapers nowadays. But we do have influence on our microcosmos. Each of us, if you're 15 years old or 85, you do have influence on how people around you think, speak and act. If you're a young person, you do have influence how your friends at school speak, think and act, in your street, in your neighborhood, in your family, in your football club, in your sports club, wherever. And this is what we would like, a seed that we want to put in their hands. You can make a difference. You can make a change. Having that in mind, we took a couple of decisions of where do we want to work. And we said, okay, let's concentrate on a couple of domains where young people meet in a very natural way. You could think of many more domains, but we decided to focus on those 4 that you see here. School, sports, street, and the social surrounding, which means your friends, can be also online. These are 4 domains where young people meet and where they can have influence on their surrounding. Or where our main target groups, multipliers, do meet young people. Where professionals know how in this specific domain do I need to talk to young people. In the formal educational setting, here also we could choose for different target groups. We decided to work with teachers and future teachers. In sports, we will go into detail for quite a lot in a moment. We work with youth workers, fan coaches in the football stadiums, and we work with kind of workshop teachers in the amateur football clubs. When it comes to how to influence youngsters in the streets, well, the police, they are no educators, but we do police trainings for very specific reasons. For some very specific reasons. Police has an enormous influence on the society, and they are seen as a very important example. How can I tell young people to take care and not to discriminate, to foster human rights, to engage for equal rights and democracy, if police doesn't do it? If every second week you read in the newspapers this behavior of policemen. And this is why we started that branch of our work. And in the domain of social surrounding, we work very much with peer-to-peer education. So we educate young people to pass on our values, our mission to other young people. That would be a masterclass on its own to tell you more details about that type of work. What do we offer to these multipliers? Actually, it sounds very easy, but it isn't. Knowledge, tools, and skills. Every intervention is tailor-made, but exists of those 3 elements. And it depends very much on the surrounding, the local situation, the social norm within that local situation, the motivation of your target group, and the knowledge they bring in. You can deal with a teacher, or a fan coach, or a policeman, or a youngster who wants to engage with young people, who has a lot of knowledge but no tools and no skills how to do it. Or a very motivated person who is maybe skillful, but he doesn't have any tools. So we carefully look into the situation, the starting point of our intervention, and according to this triangle, we make a tailor-made intervention. Why football? Well, one of the possible answers I gave you already. It's a domain where young people meet in a very natural way. In the Netherlands, in the country where we live in, it's the most popular team sport among boys. It's the 2nd most popular team sport among girls. So if you want to focus on team sport, young people come together, that's an answer. Second, you don't need to do a lot of scientific research. We did that, but it's pretty obvious that if you observe a football stadium, if you observe an amateur football game, or if you read the newspapers, that's where it happens. In the stadiums, in the team sports, in the heat of the battle, this is where anti-Semitic slurs are shouted, where racist comments are being made, where in the animosity between teams, but also tensions within your own team. You hear, see racist verbal and active behavior. We did some research in 2013, and we repeated the same type of research last year in 2023, where we actually asked teachers in the Netherlands what types of anti-Semitism do they experience in school, in the classes, during the classes, but also outside, in the hallways, in the school square, in the central hall. In 2013, the vast majority of all anti-Semitic comments that teachers observed and reported during the research had a football connotation. So what happens? These anti-Semitic or racist slogans that young people hear in the stadiums, they take them into the schools. And outside of the context of the heat of the battle of a football game, they start to lead their own lives. Joram will in a moment tell us about some of these anti-Semitic slurs that are actually meant to tease Ajax Amsterdam and their supporters. In the stadium, in that context, you may see it as that what they mean to do. But in the moment, the same types of slogans are repeated in the school classes. It has a total different setting. And as I said, it starts to lead its own life. We decided to work in this domain of football, where apparently, which is apparently one of the sources of anti-Semitic and racist behavior in schools. We decided to work on two levels. On a curational educational level, where we really want to work with the hooligans that act anti-Semitic and racist in the stadium. And in a different approach, educational prevention in the amateur football clubs, where we work with approximately 14-year-olds and try with educational workshops to, as I say, prevent racist and anti-Semitic behavior. Joram will tell us how he does that.
First of all, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Norbert. Thank you for the invitation to tell you a little bit about the work in football that we have been doing in the past 10 years. My name is Joram Verhoeven. I'm the coordinator of all our football-related activities with my team. And working for 10 years in the world of football, I mention my name, I mention my role, but I also mention my club. So, my club is Ajax Amsterdam, so already mentioned, I'm from Amsterdam, and that club will come back later on. I will take you through a journey in the football world, and the football world might be a bit unfamiliar for some, I don't know. We'll see hopefully in the Q&A. But this masterclass will hopefully show that it's a very interesting domain to work on fighting discrimination and fostering inclusion. You see a sketch next to me, which portrays also our journey in the last 10, 11 years, having started in 2013 with the research that Norbert already mentioned. And you see two lines, a green one and an orange one. And the green one is the one that Norbert mentioned, the preventative approach focusing on young football players and youngsters in the age group of 12 to 16, average of 14. And you have the orange line focusing on the curative approach with football supporters. I will show these initiatives, I will share some highlights, tell about our partnerships, also some obstacles we faced. Just a few disclaimers, it's a Dutch context, so bear that in mind with my presentation. That's one. It can be context specific, but I hope to explain everything that you don't understand. And there's one other disclaimer I want to make. education is of vital importance to fighting discrimination and racism and anti-Semitism in football, but it's not the sole solution. But it will be the part that I will be focusing on in my presentation. Just want to have said that before I dive into it. We'll start with the preventive approach. And as Norbert already mentioned, we're active with a workshop. It's a fair play workshop, we call it that. And we try to reach youngsters, young football players, especially in grassroots teams. The target groups, the age group is 12 to 16, and our goal is to raise awareness on the topics of discrimination, racism, and exclusion. In teams, especially if we have football teams in front of us, we always like to make agreements with the team, because as Norbert mentioned, too often this happens on a Saturday, on a Sunday, on a football pitch. And our goal is to have agreements with the team. How would you want to react as a team? That's also, you see in the picture, one of the reasons why the coach is there, of vital importance to fighting discrimination on the pitch. The workshop itself has different educational activities. One of them is a digital game. The words of discrimination, racism, exclusion can be very abstract to a kid that's 12 or 13 years old. So what we try to do via a digital game is to make it visible. How does it look like? And then suddenly kids start to recognize, hey, this happened to me, or this happened to my nephew, or this happened to my friend recently. So via, for example, a digital game, we try to make it visible, and we try to let them reflect and let them speak to each other on these topics and learn from each other as well. If you go to our website, I'm not a promo guy, but you can go to our website. There's the Fair Play Workshop mentioned. You see 2 video clips, and the second one also is filmed during one of the workshops. So if you're interested, hey, how does that look like? Go to our website. It will be shown at the end of my presentation. But I want to zoom out a little bit and focus on the challenge. How are we getting into these amateur football clubs? Because it's a challenge. Basic answer is via partnerships. In the last 10 years that we've forged with several institutions. There are 3 routes, basically. The first one on the below, it's the municipalities. Municipalities always have a relationship with these local amateur clubs. For example, because they own the sport facilities. You have the football association. Every country has a football association. This is the KNVB, the Dutch Football Association, that has a lot of what you call people that you affiliate as club support. So club support officers that come into these grassroots amateur football clubs to help them on several topics. One of them being fighting discrimination and fostering inclusion. But I want to zoom to the picture with the club logos. The clubs in the Eredivisie, this is the first league in the Netherlands, including my own team on the left corner, Ajax Amsterdam, because partnerships with football clubs gave us a lot during our journey. They didn't only get us into grassroots amateur clubs, but they also get us to partner schools where they work with in their local communities. But also their youth academy, something that we've been working on the last couple of years, that more and more football clubs want us to work with their youth academies. Yesterday I was traveling here to Vienna. My own team Ajax was playing. We're not doing that well this season, unfortunately. But they drawed 2-2, which is not a good case. But that aside, there were 2 goals scored. One by Kenneth Taylor, the other one by Brian Brobby. Both already made their debut also in the Netherlands team. The first workshop that we did for a youth academy team was with Ajax under 18 at that time. Both were in that workshop. So it's good to see that people, or that will be the future stars in football, that we also target those. But most of all, we work with their, what you call community departments. They're a football club. They play football. But every club in the Netherlands has what you can call a foundation, community department that's giving back to their communities, to elderly, to kids, on a variety of topics, sustainability, for example, health. But racism, discrimination, and inclusion is one that gained importance the last couple of years, and that we jumped on that train, I would like to say. I would like to show an interesting example. FC Utrecht, one of the bigger clubs here in the Netherlands, and I would like to tell you a little bit about how does this come about, because it takes a whole web of stakeholders to make this a success. You have a club that has outreach to these grass amateur clubs. I'm working at the Anne Frank House, and I would say that opens some doors. At least that's what I witnessed in the past 10 years. Working at a football club with that logo on your chest opens more doors, especially in the world of football. And we've seen that with FC Utrecht as well. If they call out to all the clubs in Utrecht, which actually they did, just after our partnership, more than half responded in 1 week that they were interested in workshops that we did with them in their stadium. Then at Frick House, we have a workshop that we also adapt to the local situation in this case. So we make, you can say you put a little bit of FC Utrecht sauce on it to make it a little bit more local. We involve the local youth board also for the pedagogical expertise, but also because they work with these youngsters on a daily basis, before the workshop, after the workshop. And of course, government or local government, but you need funding, you need support, and that is provided, and I'll come back to that in the end, also partly by the national government, and for the rest, it's all about the club that's funding the other activities. What's the biggest lesson that I learned? Don't do it by yourself, because it's time-consuming, it's energy-consuming. It's built by volunteers, of course, that have one task, actually, to make it work in their grassroots amateur club, to have somebody at the bar, to have all the teams in the right place. That's their main goal. And workshops on inclusion, on discrimination, on racism, it's not something that they are, well, most in favor of when you just bluntly call them. And that's also one, I want to quote one of the greatest that ever played the game, Pelé. No individual can win a game by himself. You can't do it on your own. That's something that we learned in the last couple of years. I want to go back to this picture. As you can see, we've been working with, in the green line, we've been working with several clubs. I think we're about working with 11 or 12 at this moment, the one more intensively than the other. We have 30 professional clubs in the Netherlands, so I would say I have a way to go forward in the next years. But I want to go to the orange line and go to the curative approach, if you allow me. It started actually with the research, but soon after, in 2015, mainly with a conference that we held in the Johan Cruijff Arena, the stadium of Ajax Amsterdam. And we invited stakeholders from England, from Germany, from Poland and the Netherlands to talk about the topic of football-related anti-Semitism. Norbert already mentioned it. I will show you something later on, because how does that look like? But because it's a problem that we've been facing for over 40 or 50 years in the Netherlands. We got inspiration, definitely, mainly from our German neighbors, especially Borussia Dortmund. Some people know the club. It's a big club in Germany. It's also awarded by the UEFA actually recently for their fight against discrimination and racism and anti-Semitism. And they were very inspirational in multiple ways, but one way, what they taught us, if you want to fight discrimination or anti-Semitism with supporters, you need to do it with them. So that was actually quite inspiring. And a few weeks later, Feyenoord called, one of the biggest club and current champions actually of the Netherlands. One of the clubs that is facing this problem for decades. And a year later, FC Utrecht, one of the other rival clubs of Ajax, did the same. But what is this problem? I said football-related anti-Semitism. I will show you a short clip illustrating this for the Dutch context. It takes 10-15 seconds. It's in Dutch, so I will translate because I don't think that many people speak Dutch here. But if it's possible, they can show the clip. Thank you. Anyone understood? I know there's at least one that speaks Dutch here. They sung a horrible song. I'm going to repeat it. Sorry. My dad was with the commandos. My mother was with the SS. Together they burned Jews, because Jews burn the best. It's a horrific text, of course. Let me first say that. If you don't know the Dutch football context, you might think, why are they singing about Jews in a football stadium? Well, that has all to do with my own club, Ajax Amsterdam. They are called the Super Jews, or at least they call themselves the Super Jews. I always get the question, why? There's no answer. It happened. I have some theories, or no, there are theories, but there's no one answer. Why do they call themselves the Super Jews? If you want to know more about it, I can tell a bit maybe in the end, but let's go on. Because what you see in football, and especially in football stadiums, is we versus them. And as Norbert already mentioned, you try to verbally get under the skin of the others. With Ajax Amsterdam calling themselves Super Jews, what do you think the other opposing fans do? Songs like this. Feyenoord and FC Utrecht, two clubs that we've been working on this with this problem, they called us after the conference and they said, hey, we have this problem and we want to actively engage. We want to take responsibility, because up until that point it was just, oh yeah, hoping that it doesn't happen. And if it happens, you need to find the perpetrators, and that succeeded in few instances, but most often not. And they said, yeah, we are a club with norms and values. This doesn't belong in our stadium. And we want to teach that to our fans, especially our young fans. So they said, can we do something on this? And I said, yeah, we can try. We can try replicate a little bit what Borussia did. So that was the start, actually, of the work in football for football supporters. And our goal was actually a common goal. Let these fans understand that they damaged their club and hurt fellow supporters, which we'll see in a second, instead of their intended target. Intended target being, for example, me, Ajax Amsterdam. Our notion was to make an impact on a football supporter. I am also a football supporter. You need to appeal to something that they really, really, really love. And that's that logo on their chest. That's their pride. Pride in their city, pride in their stadium, pride in their club. So we thought we need to appeal to that identity. So we built local, tailor-made educational programs for football fans, building upon the importance of loyalty towards the club. We use local histories, personal stories, so not the story of Anne Frank, but stories that come closer to them. And we let them meet fellow supporters, which actually one of them is standing there at your funk. I will show him later, because that's one of the most powerful things that we have done so far in these programs, and that really works. What do they do? We build day programs, literally a sort of a city tour, but different. We go to monuments, dive into the history of their own city and club. This is in Utrecht. Name monuments. More cities, also in the Netherlands, but probably also in Europe, have name monuments. And they visit this with a Jewish FC Utrecht fan who tells his family story. At the end of his talk, he always asks them to look up one name and remember that name. At the end of that program, they'll meet his grandson. But it's not just his grandson. He's also one of the most well-known supporters in the fanatic fan scene of FC Utrecht, telling him that is his granddad. This is Feyenoord, this is Rotterdam. We let them meet people that they I would say, admire. This is Miep, almost 90 years old, born and raised in Rotterdam, loves the club since she was born, has a Rotterdam accent, and I can replicate it. I'm sorry, I'm from Amsterdam, but it's a very thick Rotterdam accent. She doesn't like my club so much, so that's they have in common. But she lost her dad during the Holocaust, and she tells also the story not only of her dad, but also that these songs that you just heard, or other songs, are the reason that she's not able to go to the stadium anymore. Because every time she hears this, she sees her dad going into a gas chamber. This is Etjo, already mentioned in the Kuip, where he's also a Feyenoord fan for all his life. And one of the most important things, he's actually in every program. He goes with the supporters. One of the things and most, I would say, dear to me, actually what I did with him, I did a study trip, as Borussia Dortmund and other German clubs, mainly German clubs do, to Auschwitz-Birkenau for 5 days, a study trip, with 25 supporters. Feyenoord asked him to join, and his answer was, yes, I will, but I've never been there, because he didn't dare. But because his club asked him, he said, I'm going with you, not for myself, but for these supporters and for my club. And it was the first time to be in Auschwitz-Birkenau where he lost his family, which was for myself also very moving to see. Just are a few examples of what do we do during these programs. Here again I want to zoom into FC Utrecht, where the main message is it's a common effort. You need a lot of organizations or stakeholders to make this work. This is a photograph taken of a meeting. You see me, a few years younger. You see the mayor of Utrecht, at least at that time he was the mayor of Utrecht. You see some other partners, also from the local community, Jewish community, but also two football fans. One of them is now the ambassador of this project. I think in 2015 he was caught for antisemitism inside their stadium. Now he's the ambassador of that project. The other one is interesting because you heard the song, right? The horrible text that I just pronounced a few minutes ago. Every song needs to be written, or every chant needs to be written. The one that did that is in this photograph. He confessed during the program that we did that he was the one to write that song, which nobody knew actually, but that the program made such an impact on him. And I want to give the floor back to Norbert, because you were also there, and you want to share an anecdote.
I'm probably on the picture as well, but they cut me off.
Right, sorry.
The guy we're talking about is in blue jeans and a grey pullover at the very right-hand side of the image. And you see the mayor of Utrecht, Van Zanen. He holds in his hands the evaluation report of our first pilot of this project with FC Utrecht. And next to Joram, you see a man standing with long curly hair. He's one of the key figures in the program. He's one of the Jewish supporters of FC Utrecht. And during the program, the hooligans find out that he doesn't go to the stadium anymore because of their behavior. So this is the moment where what Joram explained just a few minutes ago, that the supporters need to understand whom they in fact target with their behavior. They want to tease the Ajax supporters, but they do a lot of harm to their own supporters, to the Jewish community in their city, probably to the entire society in the Netherlands. Well, the least is least important to them, but the other two very much so. While we were waiting for the mayor, we had time for talks, and we were invited afterwards to. This event took place in the stadium, just an hour before a very important match for FC Utrecht. And I asked him, and actually by chance I was sitting next to the guy we're talking about, with the blue jeans and the grey pullover, the one who wrote these chants and rehearsed it with his fellow supporters. So I asked the Jewish supporter, we were invited to this match afterwards. Will it be your first one? after you decided not to attend any matches anymore? And he said, no, it's my third one. And I said, what made you coming again? And then he was pointing at him. And since he was sitting next to me, I saw him really in a surprise, in a bit of a shock. And he said, me? What did I do? And he said, you asked me some weeks ago, what can I do that you come to the stadium again? That was enough for me. And that was the moment where we saw, yeah, there was something in his head that changed. And very much so, as we see in his future involvement in our project.
Yeah, that was the anecdote. Thank you, Norbert. That's about the impact that we hope to make on most of these supporters. Again, this is not us doing something. It's a collaboration between different stakeholders. The first one, of course, the club, the one that has the problem itself. But also that feels the duty that it's their duty to act. And they have what you call fan coordinators. You saw the woman next to me is the one in FC Utrecht. They are the bridge between fans and the club. And they host these programs with us, together with also local youth work. One of the things that I would like to mention about the club, they have access to their fans. I get always asked, how do you manage to get access to these fanatic supporters? I don't have these access. I don't. The club has. So that collaboration works in that sense that they have the access and they are able, especially perpetrators that get a stadium ban if they get caught, that has to deal with the club itself. We always collaborate also with the local youth work or an anti-discrimination body, a local anti-discrimination body or a local educational institution also, because what we try to do, we build a program and when it runs, we always try to hand it over to them. So let it be a local and stay a local initiative. Again, the local government, I will come back to that for the funding part, but it's vital in these kind of projects that funding is also there. And partly it's also the club that funds part of the program itself. And the local community, I don't think I need to repeat what I already said, but the guys you see on the picture or the women you see in the picture, like Albert, like Miep, they are the heart of our programs. Again, I quote one of my favorite basketball coach, Phil Jackson, the strength of the team is each individual member, but the strength of each member is the team. And that also comes back to what did we do wrong in recent years, is we see if we don't have this powerful connection with local institutions, with the club, with the local community, that we fail. And we did. There was one club that pulled the plug in a project because several reasons, because we didn't have this connection, we didn't have this powerful partnerships, and that was, for us, unfortunately, the case. And they were not committed as I would say they should be. And after a few months, I thought, maybe the problem is not as big anymore. Well, it still is. I want to go a little bit fast forward until this slide. This is an article written in a magazine because since 2022, our program is also officially a program that the Public Prosecutor's Office in Utrecht can use for fans that come to their desks. If you get caught inside the stadium, you have to deal with the Dutch FA in your club. If you get caught outside the stadium, you need to deal with police, the Public Prosecutor's Office. And what the Public Prosecutor said, of course, he or she needs a punishment, but I want to have an educational element that he or she learns from what he has done wrong. It's very interesting, and actually the first group that went with us on a trip, he was a media student in his last year. He made a documentary afterwards of this project, with interviews of all the stakeholders, but also now we asked him to build a professional video afterwards because it made such an impression. It's almost done, actually. I got an email last week, and it shows the stakeholders, but also it shows the program. So again, I'm going to make some promotion. Keep an eye on our social media or LinkedIn or whatever. It will be put out there, and I hope to have a version also with English subtitles, so you can understand, but also see the program and the fans that we target. I want to conclude with two things. In the Netherlands, since 2020, we have what we call an action plan to tackle racism and discrimination. It has 3 pillars: prevention, detection, punishment. And our projects that I just mentioned are part of this. And that's also part of the funding that's coming to us, but also to all the other institutions. It's the first communal effort to tackle discrimination and racism in sports, but also that supported the idea of football has this problem as society, but it can't face it alone and it can't challenge it alone. You need to do it with all parties involved. It's extended last year, luckily, and I think it needs to be extended more often, with a 4th pillar. And I think that's the silver lining. 4th pillar, cooperation. Then the last, that's one I want to conclude. We did a European project in 2019. We started one with Feyenoord, with VARA Network, which is the European anti-discrimination body in football, also linked with UEFA, and Borussia Dortmund, our friends from Germany, started a project to look at educational project initiatives in Europe. Go to the website, please, if you want. There's a documentary also on these projects, so it's could be quite interesting also and inspire you. We've built guidelines and recommendations. I have actually one example here, but due to the fact that I want to be sustainable, I'm not going to hand it out. It's online in German, English, and in Dutch. And it has recommendations for people that are working in football, at associations, clubs, fan groups, to get active with educational programs. It also has a compendium of good practices, so practices that we found in Europe, in European football, because I just showed you one, and we found 25. So it's interesting, maybe if you want to be active in football or want to engage, take a look, maybe something there for you, because the project that I just described maybe not be suitable for your context. That's what I want to conclude with. This is our football journey. Thank you for the attention. I think, and I still hope, that football can play a big role in fighting discrimination and foster inclusion. Also in the coming years, we will be doing that, definitely. We will be hopefully contributing to this fight for many, many, many more years. And I've been talking too long. But I still want to have, if there's room, a few questions from, Miro is nodding, yes, thank you. Questions, remarks, or comments. And again, please get in touch. You don't see it on the screen anymore, doesn't matter. Our email address, or go to the Anne Frank website, annefrank.org, and you can read all about our programs.
We have a first, thank you very much.
Thank you for a fascinating presentation. One of my questions is, you talked about Ajax. I'm from the UK, and Spurs has a similar status in the British League. How is it important that you change also the fans within those teams? So, for example, if you go to Spurs, then they chant, "We are Yid Army," which is offensive to some people, even though it's Spurs taking ownership of that. So how important is it for the teams themselves, which are being attacked through those anti-Semitic chants, to also address how they, not maybe how they represent themselves, but how some of the chants coming from them?
I give the short answer, you give the long one. Until very recently, the position of Ajax was, that we, or our supporters, call themselves the Jews. Doesn't make us responsible for anti-Semitic chants of the opponents. But it slightly changes in the meantime. Maybe you can tell a bit more.
No? I have to admit, it's a good question. Thank you for the question. Spurs indeed has a similar situation in England. Chelsea started a project against anti-Semitism after they visited us in Amsterdam. It's also a good example. No, I totally agree. And it's also, I have to admit, one of my own, I would say, things that I hated most about this is that my own club is not willing to work on this topic themselves. And Norbert also already mentioned, is probably also with Spurs, they just say, yeah, we are not the problem. But yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Please.
Is working, yes.
Yeah.
Elisabeth Sinchitz, I'm from the European Union Agency for Law Enforcement Training, and we have a large portfolio on fundamental rights, which has been my responsibility over the years, including anti-racism and specifically also antisemitism. Last year, in the meeting of the high-level group on hate speech and hate crime, at that meeting, the topic of racism in sports was big on the agenda as well. Mm-hmm. And I have planned that this year we do a few webinars about this. Maybe we can talk about this afterwards.
Pleasure.
You mentioned police as a multiplier group. I wanted to ask whether they have in any way been involved in these education workshops in some way or other. And my second question is a different one. We recently had a scandal here with one of our football clubs, and it was not about anti-Semitism, it was homophobic.
Extremely homophobic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the discussion is, was the punishment too severe? Personally, I don't think so, but I would like to know what impact does it have on youth, on young supporters when punishment is so severe? Does it have an exemplary effect, or is it more? Does it create more resistance than anything? Thank you.
I think I start with your second question because it's closer to the topic of our masterclass here. I think the event itself is to be problematized, not the punishment. Players, trainers, presidents of a football club, it weren't the supporters. I mean, some involved maybe, but it was the core of the team that was caught and filmed while doing this homophobic chants. This has enormous impact, or can at least have an enormous impact on young supporters. Because if our idols can behave like that, well, similar to what I said about the police. No? If the police can behave like that, why should I behave differently? No? So the example they give, I think that should be in the spotlight. The punishment, yes, it's important that they were punished. Personally, I don't know if it was too severe or not. It's about that there is a response, whether it's being cancelled for 3 matches or 2 or for 5. To my personal opinion, that's not so much of a difference. It is important that there was an official kind of response and apologize. Apologies. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to add something about the? Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I agree. The police.
Police, we can talk maybe afterwards because it. Similar to our work with youth, we could provide an entire masterclass on our work with police. I can't answer that within a sentence, so let's continue afterwards. Yeah. Let's keep it to football now.
Hello, I'm Tatiana Tormacic from the Council of Europe. Thanks a lot. It was really interesting. I wanted to ask you, do you have a gender perspective in your work? Because on most of the slides, we saw only men. Does that mean they're the only ones to be racist and anti-Semitic, or what? Or what is your gender perspective in your work? Thanks a lot.
When it comes to football, I just try to answer quickly. When it comes to the football fans, it's almost all male. When it comes to women's football, the youth players, luckily we have a lot of female teams as well, which is growing every year, so I'm very happy about that. But to be honest, it's as worse as in men's youth football. Yeah, there it happens. But if you look at football fans, it's almost all male. I'm not sure if you want to add.
And when it comes to a broader educational approach, well, if we would have shown the short trailer about our workshops, you would have seen a lot of girls. Because when we go into the amateur football clubs, that's girls' football as well. And when it comes to police, youth, education, there's, especially among youth and education, we have a majority of female participants. So I think it's, all in the end, it's pretty balanced.
Thank you for the interesting presentation. Just to share maybe experiences here in Austria, or especially Vienna, where anti-Semitism is an issue and has been an issue. In football, we have this dichotomy between Rapid Vienna and Austria Vienna. Austria Vienna dubbed as a Jewish club, Rapid Vienna as a proletarian, whatever, non-Jewish. And I think there was a very important process going on from 2011, that the club started to research about its own history, and they found out Rapid is as Jewish as Vienna, Austria Vienna, and even there was a choreography by the ultras commemorating William Goldschmidt, who was giving the colors to Rapid, changing the name. So I think that's very, very crucial to also look into history and then talk with supporters.
Yeah, and actually what you just said, it's the same in the Netherlands. If you look at the past of Feyenoord, they are more board members, more fans, more funders Jewish than with Ajax Amsterdam.
Yeah. And it's a known phenomenon that anti-Semitism can also target at people or institutions that are perceived Jewish, whether they in fact have a Jewish identity, like Ajax Amsterdam doesn't. That's less important than the perceived identity of a person or an institution that's targeted.
We have room for one more question.
I just wanted to ask, do we have more room for one last question?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Maybe we can do both. But,
okay, a lot of pressure to have the last question. My name is Orly Mikalko, and I'm from the Global Campus of Human Rights. And thank you for a really wonderful and very interesting presentation. I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about how participants are selected for these programs, because I understand that you do a lot of work with, say, gatekeepers, but it also seems that you're working with some of the real hardliners, if I can put it that way. And are they self-selecting, or are they identified, and what's their initial reaction to these kinds of workshops? Because it strikes me that you may experience a bit of pushback.
Yeah, well, that can happen, of course. That's a good question. How are they selected? There are multiple ways, actually. One of them I was telling you about was stadium bans. If you're a perpetrator, you've done something, you get a stadium ban, you're not allowed inside the stadium for a couple of years, for example. What you have in the Netherlands, you have a system that you can reduce your sentence if you do some work with your football club. That can be very broad, can be washing toilets, but I think it's more valuable if you have programs like this. So it's actually, they come to the club themselves because they have a ban for 5 years, and they say, I would like to go back earlier. Well, you have a choice. Go back to your home or go with the workshop. So that's one. The second one was the one that I already showed you with the public prosecutor's office, of course. But one interesting thing that's actually been doing, German clubs are doing more often than we do. FC Utrecht does it as well. They go to the active supporters. So in FC Utrecht, for example, you have the Bunnik side, which is one stand which are with the fanatic supporters. And they actively ask them, you need to come with us. And it sounds weird maybe, but they do. And also, one of the things that we always mention, you just go with the day learning about your own program. That's what we tell them, your own club, your own city. We're not talking about anti-Semitism beforehand. And actually, the pushback during a workshop or after workshop, we don't see it. Actually, normally they actually say, can my friend go next time? So it's also you learn something about your city and your club, which fans tend to like.
Thanks. Actually, we had two last questions. Can we take the second?
One.
Yeah?
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my first question would be, you said that the majority of the football fans are male. I think a lot of us here are women. I think a lot of us are also football fans. We know that some of the stadiums are not safe for us, especially some sectors are incredibly unsafe. So I was wondering whether you are also collaborating with other NGOs who are doing work on misogynistic or sexist approaches or narratives or anti-LGBTQI narratives. And my second question would be just very short, whether the FA action plan is available online, because my country, Hungary, is also trying to develop something like that.
Yeah, fair enough. The first question, the second one, yeah, it's online. Actually, there should be an English translation. If it's not, then I will contact them and say there needs to be an English translation of it, so you can find it online. The first question is yes, but it's not something that we are particularly busy with, but there are institutions, I mentioned NGOs, which is very broad, but there are NGOs working in this plan that work more on this topic, luckily working more on this topic. And from my perspective, also for the Dutch FA, they take it more serious than they did a few years ago. But that's my outside perspective, but something that I would applaud.
Yeah. Well, then we would like to thank you all very much for your attention and for your questions and for following us on our trip. And
have a good stay here.
Have a good stay in Vienna at the conference, and maybe we bump into each other and can continue our conversation. Yeah. Thank you very much.